everyone. My name is Jenna Beck, and I lead the marketing effort for TCS's Enterprise Application Services. And I want to welcome you to the second edition of TCS's Future of Finance for Technology Industry webinar series. For today's session, we have invited SAP and BlackLine to join us to discuss data-driven, resilient finance operations. But we'll start today's session with a welcome address by Shivaji Basu. Shivaji is the head of Industry Advisory Group, Technology Business Unit. He'll discuss the challenges many finance organizations are experiencing today within the technology industry. Following Shivaji, our panel will discuss the changing role of CFO as the enterprises embrace a digital-first culture led by data insights. Our panel will include Michel Hezendax from SAP. He's the global solution owner for FP&A. We have Molly Boyle, Director of Solution Marketing at BlackLine. And our moderator is Padma Rowe, Global Head of TCS's Financial Management Solutions. Throughout the forum, I will be monitoring the Q&A for our speakers, and I encourage you to post questions in the chat. There'll also be a short online poll, and we really request you to provide your thoughts as part of that poll. So with that, I wanted to introduce Shivaji and pass it over to him.
In finance, and of course, we are talking at a time when we are probably at the threshold of a very different dimension of digital transformation that we are seeing post-pandemic. And there's a significant restructuring that is happening in the marketplace as we see. We believe the primary audience in today's session would be the CFO and the financial fraternity. And CFOs, as we know, is probably the only role in an organization which wears a dual persona, one that is conservative. When I say conservative, it has the oversight of ensuring that the risk management practices are well exercised. At the same time, she or he would as well be progressive to see that the financing for strategic initiatives and the returns are well accounted for. And it is a very difficult line to treat, is what we see. And I think it's very much reflective of the domain of finance itself. As we know, in finance, traditionally there are two disciplines. One is financial accounting, another is management accounting. Financial accounting as a procedure and practice has not changed significantly over the last maybe 100 years, and that should not, because it's a well laid down framework for accounting for business. And over the years, the standards may have changed in terms of our interpretation of the allowance in these practices, but fundamentally the principles have remained the same. But that doesn't mean that it's an area which has not undergone or does not warrant much innovation. Rather, we see that the innovation has a more important role today, especially in the mix of financial and management accounting. In management accounting, on the other hand, we see that this has been traditionally an area which has been influenced by technology. A lot of standard costing, capital budget, and planning activities that we do today are influenced by what is possible by technologies coming from supply chain and in the areas of business intelligence. Now, as we speak about these areas, we see that there's a significant shift which is coming in now with the digital transformation and definition of these practices. I'll give you one example, and that's what we are seeing in the industry, the tech industry that we work with. Traditionally, we know that apportionment of any indirect cost or overhead to our gross profit or operating cost has been done using very broad heuristics, which we call activity-based costing. In fact, Michelle is in this call, and in SAP, these kind of practices are very well defined. And what comes first to my mind is a statistical key factor with which we do it, where we have a very broad heuristics to apportion overheads like power, electricity, real estate into our variable costs so that the gross profits are reflected. Now, this is not a very accurate way of representing, but knowing the limitations of data in real life business, it's still a very accountable way of doing so. Now, what has happened of late is with technology, these practices are changing. We have customers who have factories, plants, fabs, where they are actually getting direct telemetry on exact amount of power or even time consumption that is happening in machinery and other overheads for every lot of produce. So what is happening is many of the indirect costing practices are now leading to direct costing practices with real-time data and telemetry that is coming. So I summarize that practices do not change, but what changes is the procedures with technology. And we are in a threshold where many of these procedures will change. Now, in this discussion today, there are two aspects of this change that we're talking about. One is the core processes, and another is the processes at the edge. When it comes to core processes, many of the organizations are running on the best practices which comes along out of the box from SAP Toolkit or the SAP Suite in that manner. And there has been a major change in definitions of late. Until now, whenever we have defined processes, that is until very recently, in the core ERP systems, they were based on workflows and allocation of tasks and the rules within those, which we call a business process management regime. Of late, what we are seeing is an additional dimension which is coming in, which we call the ecosystem. A maturity of the process comes into play on how we are able to harness dynamic ecosystems. And when we do so, the definition of these processes change. In some cases, it gets simplified. For example, making partners participate in the choice of products, in the choice of raw materials and components can be a part of the workflow in which the design process happens and even the procurement process happens. And we see SAP coming off, on the digital transformation by bringing in that kind of a change in their processes. But at the same time, we also see a lot of other tools which are redefining themselves in complementing the ecosystem dimension that I talked about. For example, when we talk about automation tools which are secondary processes of rules, like BlackLine, which is known for recon, or the RPA tools, hitherto these tools had the job of automating the manual task by doing what a reconciliation would be done by a human, following the same kind of practices and rules. But today we see these tools are emerging as significant source of intelligence by mashing up very complex reports and becoming a part of decision support. So the software that we require and the processes are equally becoming more contextual, both in the core as well as at the edge. And to have that discussion, the core versus edge, how we are evolving in the industry, we have the right participation, I believe. We have Michelle from SAP, as well as we have Molly from BlackLine. I am here joined by Padma, my colleague, and she looks after financial services to moderate this discussion. And I'm sure there are a few takeaways from this discussion. Over to you, Padma.
Thank you, Shivaji, for setting the context so well and getting on with the conversations with Molly and Michelle. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and welcome to the conversation. And we are hoping that all of us get a lot of insight from both of you based on the trend that you're seeing in the market in this very challenging pandemic times that we are going through. So the forward-looking CFOs are considering how they can play a strategic role in helping transform the business from a traditional model that Shivaji referred to a one that enables executives to access insights in real time. And with so much of data available, it's a challenge for them to convert them into a real-time insight with an intent to drive growth across entire business. Because all said and done, irrespective of whatever is happening, everybody is looking at growth. Transforming organizations to support future-ready digital business models is another challenge for the CFOs currently. how to leverage new technologies like blockchain, analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence as levers for growth is yet another dilemma. We talked before pandemic about intelligent enterprises, higher automation, collaboration, higher productivity, etc. And now in the new normal, it's actually becoming even more relevant. But so many people who may who are now working remotely may soon get into a hybrid model of some of them returning to work and some of them working remote. And based on our study of the trends, we foresee that from now until at least the year 2025, companies will face enormous responsibility on the CFOs to help create new business models as they transition to a real-time digital first culture. Molly, in your opinion, with this growing expectations from CFO, what challenges are the CFOs facing, and how are they really coping with this?
Sure. Thanks so much, Padma. Glad to be here today, and thanks to everyone for joining. This is a great question and a great place to start the discussion today. I was actually just doing some reading for a different project on CFO.com the other day, and it was really interesting. There was an article that talked about top skills for CFOs in the current environment, the current economy, and I thought it was really, really interesting because there was this top 10 list, and nothing on the top 10 list had anything to do with compliance or forecasting, all of those sort of traditional things that you would think about, a CFO being the leader for and the steward for. Those are expected, right? They're expected to still happen and to be done really well and to be done on time. But that's now just sort of scratching the surface of what the CFO is responsible for. So I think one of the biggest challenges is just reacting to these expanded roles and this need for, constant partnership, real-time information. I think years ago, even not that long ago, many CFOs came from a more technical accounting background, right, where compliance was sort of their core training, their foundation. And I just saw, in the same article on CFO.com that today, only 14% of CFOs that were recently promoted were controllers or chief accounting officers. So we're seeing these CFOs that, have these really broad skill sets. They have an operational background. They're, brought in or promoted from within to drive growth, to drive strategy, to work really closely with the CEO and CIO. And what that means, back to your question about the challenge, is that the CFO has to figure out a way to do all those things that used to be the majority of her job or his job. The CFO has to find a way to do those really well, but also while managing these much larger initiatives. So I think that's, as we work with accounting and finance organizations, we're absolutely seeing that. And, finding a way to automate, to innovate, and to free up resources is really, really important to be able to enable that type of CFO role.
Quite a bit on the CFO's plate. Michelle, can you elaborate more from specifically high-tech industry point of view? What trends are you observing?
Yeah, maybe a first point to hook into what Molly was just saying. Let's say this increased focus or an incredible focus on value-added activities rather than what let's say a classic finance person is supposed to do. Of course, that's basically something which is cross-industry. I think we see this evolution just everywhere. But then let's say coming to high tech, and let's say also having talked to my colleagues who are experts in that space, actually to kind of limit it for our discussion today, I'd like to highlight basically three things. First of all, there's a lot of, let's say, shifting of the organizations going on, all kinds of mergers and acquisitions and additional investments and so on and so forth, basically, which leads to a lot of different complexities, because actually, no matter what's happening, they always, at any moment in time, still need to be able to produce the figures, because organizations are just so much more data driven today than in the past. Also, basically, finance KPIs are crucial. because they give a good idea on, let's say, what's happening overall. So let's say, therefore, let's say, and then basically looking at through SAP glasses a little bit, let's see how we can merge or bring together also the underlying ERP systems. How can we quickly get to group level reporting? That's just a couple of thoughts which immediately pop up there. A second one is basically all about what was already addressed, business model change. I think the high-tech industry is really one of those industries where this is, let's say, super hot. Like it's, let's say, from, selling printers to printing as a service. As just a very simple example, and I apologize for not being the expert in the high-tech industry specifically, brings all kinds of challenges. And one of them, I think is often overlooked, is actually the impact this has not only on the way you go through you generate basically revenue and therefore profit, but also, let's say, from a down-to-earth finance perspective, what is the impact of this on the RevRec, for instance, because it's completely changed this is around. And a third one, I think, let's say, with this business model change is, let's see, the fast increase of importance in being able to simulate different scenarios, to cross-check on the financial viability on whatever crazy idea we might have to put into practice. So that's just a couple of thoughts. And back to you, Padma.
Thank you, Michelle. That's very insightful. Michelle, I'm also curious to know as to how are the CFOs shaking up the status quo to be prepared to adopt new business models to create a more agile organization. So you mentioned about the changes in the trend in the high tech and technology industry that's happening, but what is the contribution of the CFOs to adopt to these changes?
Yeah. Actually, all of those changes, and just to pick one, for instance, like if you think about shifting to product or box moving to, let's say, changing that into a whole service economy model, I think there, let's say, that's one nice example which clearly illustrates how, let's say, how important the role of the CFO is actually, because this business model change basically has an impact, of course, on your commercial model, on your commercial process and how you execute it. It also has a potential big impact on your supply chain. But actually at the center of the entire game is actually finance. Finance transformation is the centerpiece. And we're not supposed to say this because we're just finance professionals and we're interested in this field. But every time you do this, let's say, this financial viability of whatever decision is being made is so utterly crucial. And getting all of the data together, making sure, let's say, we also see and kind of look at what the process impact might be. So basically, that's where, for instance, topics like BPI, business process integration and automation come in. That's a couple of things which, let's say, are incredibly high on the agenda of the CFO, which, in a way, as Molly was already saying in the beginning, is miles away from, let's say, debit and credit postings and making sure that we provide the right tax reports.
Right. So, Michelle, in your experience, what skills are expected from a team working on such a transformation journey to achieve the end goal, the target business strategy and the operational experience? How has that changed from, the CFO can't do it all alone, but she requires a team to work on this transformation. So how are the expected skills of the team now actually undergoing a change, and what are the new trends there?
I think one of them, and for sure, let's say for many attendees today, it's not gonna, let's say, sound like a surprise, but let's say bringing the right people around the table. I think, let's say, if I would personally, and I used to be a CFO, that's the first thing when I entered that organization is to understand what the business was really about. Let's say, put my feet and put them in the mud. So let's say, collaborate with those people on the ground, let's say, across all of the different functional domains. I still personally believe, and I don't think it's just a personal belief, we see it everywhere, is, let's say, being able to think cross-functional, let's say, to understand even what your business is, let's say, what your industry is going through, is incredibly crucial. And then, of course, in a second wave, basically as a second step, to also be able to analytically, and not just by yourself, but with all of those people around the table, from the different lines of businesses, to make sure we can really think in processes not just in practical figures, but make a little bit of abstraction, go through the processes, and also see, because of course these things are getting more and more complicated, more and more complex, to ensure that we also have a basic IT or technology savviness, I would call it. I don't even know whether it's correct English, but to ensure, let's say, that we can understand how and where technology can help us, let's say, to just automate the hell out of certain processes, to improve certain ways of thinking, because actually these applications often, and especially, of course, let's say me being from SAP, you wouldn't expect anything else, but let's say, of course, there is a lot of, let's say, process intelligence already embedded in all of those processes. So to understand this and not having to start from a white blank sheet of paper every time. That's a couple of, I think, changed requirements and needs, and just a couple of them that are actually very much needed. And this business knowledge is actually overarching, let's say, the classic accounting knowledge, which is of course still important, right? Because that machine needs to keep on rolling as well. But there's so much more to it these days that the CFO and his or her team need to concentrate on. So thanks. Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good insight. Molly, I want to turn around the similar question to you, but then with BlackLine being comparatively newer in the market as compared to SAP, BlackLine is more infant, and BlackLine is looked at more like a closing operation system. So with that background, what kind of changes in the skills are you looking at in the CFO's office when you're interacting with the CFOs from your side?
Yeah, sure. I think, and yes, like Michelle, who comes from a CFO background, I come from a controllership background. So worked in, corporate accounting and public accounting for years before joining BlackLine. And, we're seeing a lot of really similar shifts. Two of the things that I'll echo that Michelle highlighted are an understanding and sort of, usability around technology, right? We don't want to hire people that only know how to live in paper and spreadsheets. The talent model is definitely changing there. And I think, the role, just like I highlighted at the beginning with the CFO role shifting to be more operational, that all trickles down, right? So the CFO now relies almost entirely in many cases on the chief accounting officer or the controllership to really handle all of the compliance, all of the external reporting, to provide inputs to the financial reporting process and the forecasting process. And so, understanding data, understanding technology is a huge piece of that. Accounting, we expect to see hiring increase, I think, generally speaking, in 2021, which is something to be optimistic about. That's great. But we expect the hiring to change, right? Accounting teams are not looking to hire bodies anymore to handle things that, are traditionally done in, shared services centers, receivables, payables, payroll, all those operational accounting areas that now, are ripe to be automated and to have technology. We're seeing those types of roles not necessarily go away, but we're seeing those resources be repurposed to more technical types of things, right? Michelle also mentioned M&A being on the rise, right? As we see companies do more complex transactions, right? With this new revenue standard, we have a new leasing standard and, coming out, all of these things, those are technical accounting skills, right? Not your, I'll do air quotes here, not your bean counter skills of, the days in the past. And so I think, yes, for accounting teams, the trends are very much like finance organizations, like the CFO. We want those more technical skills. And we also want agility in accounting, right? I think one thing that's important to point out is accounting has so long been centered around the close, right? Which for many companies is 5 days or 10 days at the end of the month where everyone is heads down scrambling. And we see companies really making a shift now, in many ways because the technology is enabling it, to a more continuous accounting approach where those closed activities are being better balanced and performed more real time throughout the month as business is occurring rather than, only on day 3 once a month. And so accounting professionals who, have the ability to think outside the box, to reimagine the way the close is performed is becoming increasingly important.
True. Yeah. So the CPAs and the chartered accountants around the world need to re-image themselves into a techno finance role, if we want to call it something like that.
It's
to
exciting.
Be more relevant in the coming market. Yeah. And with that, I'm now tempted to ask Michelle, in terms of the cross-industry digital ecosystem that we are seeing, how can finance really leverage advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence, IoT, blockchain, etc., to prepare for a digital competition? So how does that really interlink and twine with the CFO's functions?
Right. So actually, to that point, I think there's a lot of, let's say, a lot of buzzwords in your question, and I hope you don't mind me saying this. And I know we are using these buzzwords constantly ourselves, as well as many others in the market. Let's say, I would say, yeah, it's of course interesting to see, and we have, so let's say, a huge amount of individual specific use cases where actually we are, let's say, leveraging machine learning, we are leveraging RPA, where we are leveraging AI, where we are actually leveraging the conversational UI, which is embedded in our user experience of all of our software applications these days, and so on and so on and so forth. But sometimes, honestly, and let's say, I think it's important to take one step back, because sometimes people say, yeah, I heard something about machine learning, and now we need to apply machine learning everywhere. No, I don't agree. Let's see, actually, the right piece of technology should be, let's say, inserted at the right place in your business process. But again, I'm sorry for, let's say, hitting the same nail once more. But let's say the optimization of your business process and the whole BPI piece actually as a starting point is incredibly crucial. And then, of course, if you optimize it, then you can say, well, okay, here I can automate this way. But for instance, RPA, that's a nice example. Like, a lot of people are talking about RPA. And then initially, a couple of years ago, SAP was often told, like, yeah, you're late in the game of RPA. In a way, you could say that's true, but let's say, and just as an illustration point, I think you're, well, in a way, yeah, but on the other hand side, we basically said, if you have a process fully integrated in whatever application, there is no need for RPA. You don't need it. Basically, you don't have any breaks in your process. Basically, and say you don't need to do any cover-up with little piece of additional information. That doesn't take away the need for RPA in certain instances, because like it's an imaginary dream to say, well, that all of your processes are running seamlessly in one application across the world. Of course not. So there is absolutely value, but use it in the right way. Same thing with machine learning. Like if, for instance, your data that you're using as basis for training a particular machine learning app, for instance, to reconcile incoming payments with open items, which we, for instance, do with our cash application. Like if the base data that you're learning from is crap, then actually you're learning the wrong thing and you're automating in the wrong way. So all kinds of things to be taken into consideration. But of course, well, there's a lot of or valuable, let's say, value in it to use. But I would say, like, use it in the right way, and actually make sure that the right piece of technology is applied in the right way, in the right place. That's where we're actually going.
It's extremely insightful, Michelle, and I think that exactly resonates as to why the CFOs and the team needs to be technology savvy as well, to be able to take the right decision, to know where to adopt technology and where really to fix the process related issues. Excellent. Thanks for those insights. So Molly, a quick question for you on the flexibility and scalability of of BlackLine, given that, we do see a mix of ERPs. Not every time customers can have the luxury of having a single ERP in the landscape. And then Shivaji mentioned about that, and also Michelle mentioned about the huge consolidation that's happening in the technology business functions in the industry overall, and so much of mergers and acquisitions happening around. So we would like to have some insights from you on how does BlackLine really fit into that complex ecosystem.
I think you made some great points, Padma, about companies and their ERP landscapes. And, quite honestly, even for those organizations that have the luxury of a single instance of S/4HANA, let's say, the reality is there's still a lot of financial data that's outside the ERP, even when you have, a really, really sophisticated and lean ERP system, right? I think particularly in accounting and in the world that I live in around the financial close, right? We've got, depending on what industry you're in, we've got leasing systems, we've got revenue recognition solutions, we've got, bank data, right? You've got credit card information, the list goes on. There are so many data sources. And for accounting and finance organizations, the reality for a long time has been that data gets sort of reconciled, certified, substantiated in spreadsheets, right? We're spending all of our time dumping information into spreadsheets, doing VLOOKUPs, all these different types of activities that are really error prone. They take too much time, and the list goes on, right? They're also not the type of work that most of the skilled accounting professionals we talked about before are looking to do. And so, I think particularly in this time of disruption, getting information in a place where it can be accessed easily and where there's not a tremendous amount of manipulation needed to that data is really important. And so on the BlackLine side, for those who might not be super familiar with BlackLine, our solution is cloud-based, right? And really ERP and data agnostic. So it's the functionality and the need there is complementary to any ERP environment. Again, whether you have a single instance of S4 or whether you have, we have companies and customers that have 100 different ERPs. And, we've already talked a good amount today about M&A activity being on the rise, right? Even as companies integrate their newly acquired or their merged entities, again, they don't get to a single source of the truth or single source of data really quickly. And so in accounting and finance, being able to stay agile, being able to automate repetitive work, and really the first step to a lot of that is getting visibility to a holistic sense of the world in the close, and being able to do that quickly and in the cloud has been a big enabler for a lot of our customers, particularly, I think, as folks shifted to working remotely over the past year. For so long, accounting work was always done in the office. And people relied on in-person touch points. We did a survey at BlackLine in April last year after a lot of the lockdowns were, taking place. And we asked people, what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now? We were curious to know, of course, was it the more technical aspects? Was it business side of things? And almost in every case, communication and collaboration was the number one challenge that accounting and finance professionals said. Once they could get their hands on the data and once they had visibility to the information that they needed, a lot of their processes could be performed pretty seamlessly from home. But being able to share documents, particularly with third parties like auditors that are so important to the regulatory world, all that is really, really crucial. And so, we've seen in a lot of ways the pandemic as a catalyst for some of these companies that have relied on the traditional manual processes. This has been sort of that compelling event for those organizations to invest in solutions that are quick time to value, right? That are agile, and that can bring in data easily. And so that's where we've seen BlackLine play in a really complementary way, to SAP particularly. We have a solution extension relationship with SAP. which helps with a lot of, really holistic integration and things like that. But for a lot of our SAP customers, again, as you suggested, Padma, they don't have one instance of SAP. So BlackLine helps complement their ERP by bringing in a lot of that other data and information from their other ERPs. So yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent insight, Molly. Thanks for that. Michelle, at TCS, you would have already read about it and had in our conversations that we have reaffirmed our intent to be a purpose-led organization, especially during the pandemic. And we have defined 3 horizons as our purpose: build a digital core, innovate business models, and transform and grow around purpose-led ecosystem. And the big lesson from the pandemic in 2020 is that an increasingly borderless world, and it's a purpose which is a unifying force around this borderless world. Can you elaborate on SAP's purpose statement and how it kind of integrates with the TCS's purpose and which is actually working in strengthening our partnership?
Yeah, sure. And like before I deep dive into that, or I'll deep dive a little bit at least, because this is a very broad topic and a huge topic for SAP overall. First remark I just want to make that I think, let's say, next to just the technology alignments with between TCS and SAP, I think also here we are very well aligned. And actually to basically just call it out as a first step, let's say, I would assume that some of you, at least I hope that some of you will have heard about, let's say, this one phrase that SAP often, let's say, puts out there, that SAP's purpose is to help the world run better and improve people's lives. That's kind of summarized it really nicely. Let's see what our purpose is, really to make sure that we can get to the creation of a positive economic and environmental and social impact with the planetary boundaries. And actually, I just had to read it out in order to be sure that I don't miss anything out there. So a lot of different, let's say, areas, which actually we try to address in 2 ways. Like, first of all, by leading by example, actually. And I just recently heard from our global CFO, Luka Mucic, in a meeting we jointly had last week. And actually this whole purpose-led organization initiative is led under his umbrella as our global CFO, is that actually we have been, let's say, for a number of years now in a row, the best performing, let's say, company in at least our sector where we are active in, and that's kind of making me proud, because I think it's really crucial. But apart from it, let's say, I think it's also important and interesting to stress that, let's say, next to leading by example, we also want to be an enabler for other organizations, let's say, to get to a sustainable reality and becoming more of a purpose-led organization by providing them multiple services and products that they can use. And some of you might have heard about our Climate 21 initiative. And even linking it back to the rest of our conversation, I think it's interesting to also note that, let's say, in order to really have a 360 view on your financial performance, or basically business performance, sustainability becomes an increasingly important factor in there. If you think about, let's say, the impact on the environment, let's say, and it's not just carbon taxes, which are basically representing a tax. There's so much more to it, and that, of course, is only one element. Internally, as well as towards, let's say, other organizations, we also believe it's very important to ensure that, let's say, there's inequality for all, that, let's say, there's social and inclusive, let's say, workforce, as well as entrepreneurship actually supported. And that's just, let's say, part of our basic ethics around this, in order to basically directly or indirectly make sure that we can address all of the UN Sustainability Development Goals at SAP, and also support organizations through, let's say, enabling solutions there.
Oh, that's really very inspiring to see the purpose-led growth initiative collaborating so well with the customers' purposes as well. So Molly, one of the pushbacks that we generally hear is that, how can really BlackLine, which is, helping close books of accounts, really contribute towards a growth statement of an organization or a growth purpose of an organization? How do you really respond to this pushback, and what kind of responses have you seen from the customers?
Yeah, sure thing, Padma. I think, first of all, I think BlackLine, in terms of our purpose and the role that we serve in accounting and finance, is really well aligned to both, TCS and SAP as it relates to being a purpose-driven organization. BlackLine is really founded on three core principles of think, create, and serve. And I think even as a financial close and account reconciliation and close management solution, there is a lot that we can do to help our customers work smarter, right? We try to serve our customers that way so that they can get the most out of their resources and that they can spend the majority of their time on those purpose-driven activities, right? Not on those manual financial close tasks. So we're really focused as an organization on making the controller and the chief accounting officers' life easier, as well as serving, the communities and each other as well. So I wanted to call that out because I think the alignment there is good. As it relates to, the close and, that the pushback, as you said it, that companies can't really grow based on accounting. While that may be true indirectly, I think a common phrase I'd like to think about is trust, right? Trust is built really in drips, but it can be lost in buckets. And I think that applies really well when it comes to accounting and finance, right? I've heard CFOs say before, as a CFO, I can't make my career on accounting, but I can lose it on accounting really quickly, right? And so having compliance, having trust in the results, in the numbers is absolutely critical and is at the foundation of, particularly publicly traded companies, right? Shareholder trust is critical to the growth of a company and to the stability of an organization. And so the more that companies like BlackLine can make the controller's life easier and can help them focus on what matters most, rather than looking for a needle in a haystack, the better off organizations will be. So I certainly understand that the hesitation and it doesn't shock me that accounting hasn't always been the first department in a company to get budget for innovation. But as I suggested, I think we've seen, particularly in the past several months, the pandemic be a catalyst for that. And it's really, really exciting to see, the expanding and shifting roles.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And with that note on purpose-led growth of the three organizations, we look forward to working, serving, and innovating for our customers. And let me turn around for the poll results and take questions from our participants.
Thank you, Padma. And what a wonderful panel, very insightful. So thank you, Michelle and Molly. That's great. We're just waiting for our poll questions to come up, and here they come. So our first question, which one of these expectations do you think is most likely to be true for your organization in the year 2025? Clearly, the winner is finance cycles, and the finances go in real time. Followed up with finance will double down on business insights and service when operations are automated. So those are the two biggest, most important expectations that people feel are true for leading into 2025. The second question, which of the following is your organization considering as a result of the pandemic? And clearly another winner here is implementing cost containment. I don't know if that's a winner, but I think that's the reality of what people are going through. And then the last one is the most significant area where finance leaders are supporting their organization to navigate challenge and building new business models. I think we have here identifying opportunities to improve cash flow, which makes sense, and then followed by review compliance and controls with risk mitigation. Those are really interesting. Padma, do you want to have any comments on these?
I think this is resonating very well with the conversations that we have had, and finance cycles, finance goes real time. I think this is something which we spoke about so much in detail, that no more finance or accounting or the work is an year-end process, but it's really pushing them to a day-to-day insight rather than waiting for a period end or a quarter end, and as well improving implementing cost containment where you want to do real value add activity rather than repetitive activity, and then that going to an enterprise wide outlook rather than just a CFO outlook, for ensuring that the business processes at the base are really addressed rather than looking at it as a end of the tail kind of information where you're trying to cut costs and cut corners. So I think these poll results are actually resonating very well with the conversation that we've had in the last 30-40 minutes.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. So we're gonna, with that, why don't we move over to the questions? And if anyone has any questions, please include them in the chat room right now so we can get them to our esteemed panel here. But let me just start off with one. That it was a question of if all of you could share best practices that you have for enabling digital finance in a virtual world. So Molly, why don't I start with you, and then we could go to Michelle and Padma.
Sure thing. Yeah. I love this question. So thanks to whoever submitted it. I think, looking back, it's hard to believe. And then it also feels like a lifetime, depending on the day, that it's been almost a year that we've been living in this virtual world. And I think we've learned a lot. One of the things that I would say, particularly, I think, for accounting and finance professionals, is to focus on the next executable step, and to focus on continuous process improvement, right? I think it's really easy right now, especially with some of the buzzwords that Michelle mentioned earlier, for people to think about finance transformation and digital transformation and get really overwhelmed really quickly, or, to not know where to begin on these types of journeys. And with all of you, trying to contain costs, as the audience suggested here, I think there's so much that can be done quickly that give you incremental wins, and those wins generate momentum over time. So my advice as far as best practices would be, look at those low-hanging fruit, find a way to get your arms around the things that, take the most time, waste the most time. That could be something as simple as, what are the things that you're having the most meetings about? What are the things that are still handled, on email and on spreadsheets? What are the things you could use technology and quick wins to address, and then free up those resources and start redeploying those people to focus on more strategic things? I think we've seen our customers do a lot of that over the past several months, and really even before the pandemic. But I think those quick wins are really important.
Michelle, how about you? We have 5 minutes? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, well, there's plenty of thoughts on this, but I think we're gonna run over time if I would express them all. But actually, to link a little bit to what Molly was saying, and actually also to stay close to actually an area where BlackLine as well as SAP together are, let's say, very strong at, is optimizing your closing process. What I let's say, to just take one practical example, right? If you think about an organization on the one hand side, basically that prior to the pandemic, or even independent of the pandemic, just the pandemic has made it utterly visible. Let's say that there's a lot of automation capabilities and process improvements possible. If you think one company that is still basically maintaining their let's say their closing process, which is a classic style monthly, let's say with a big whiteboard in the office with task number 1, task number 2, task number 3, and so on till task, I don't know what, 275. And then basically shifted the idea of the advanced financial closing for instance, which is automatically monitoring, let's say in combination with BlackLine as an add-on, let's say to really streamline the entire process. Actually, one thing which immediately becomes clear is that, in terms of even communicating who needs to do what when, in the first case, with everybody, all of them having to work from home, you don't have your whiteboard anymore, right? So it's just, you don't know what to do. If you have thought about this, let's say already beforehand, it's interesting to see that basically the entire process, the whole monitoring of my process, and a lot and more automation steps actually are there, let's say, for grabs in your system. So there we see, let's say, and I don't have to look far, and let's see if I just talk to our internal colleagues at SAP worldwide. Let's say there's finance professionals everywhere in so many different countries. Again, we are using this closing automation and monitoring. Like that really has helped them. We needed to do that anyway because we have been working with shared service offices. So basically, for those organizations that are already in that situation, probably have moved partially. But I thought it was just a very practical, a very tangible example of, let's say, of how we can easily optimize and get our head around the mother of all finance processes being the closing process. Yeah, that's just one. And I could give you 200 others, but there might be other questions we need to tackle. So.
All right, then. Well, why don't we move to, or Padma, do you have anything to add or any thoughts on your side for best practice?
I just want to add one small thing to what Molly and Michelle said, is that the best practices when we look at enabling digital finance in a virtual world is that people are looking for quick wins to keep the motivation level going and to reinforce their confidence in the journey that they have taken. So most of the people are putting that big roadmap, multi-year roadmap, multi-billion-dollar roadmap, but they're also looking at quick wins. What is it that you can achieve in the short term, near term, and show that improvement to keep getting the process going? That's a very clear signal that we are getting from most of the customers who have embarked on a digital finance journey.
Thanks. And I think so. Speed seems to be the theme here, and it goes along with our next question. Finance executives are responsible for finance controls and capital integrity, but they're also focused on how to move as fast as possible. How can finance executives balance these opposing forces? And I'll leave that to whoever wants to jump in first with that question.
Yeah, but I think one element in terms of speed is actually is the availability, and we talked about it before. Let's say the availability of the right data at the right level of granularity. So actually, the first thing which immediately pops up into my head, if I don't have to discuss anymore who's looking at the right figures, but I'm confident I am looking at the right figures, and we all are, so that we have a single financial truth at our fingertips in real time. That's basically going to be tremendously important in order to basically go fast forward at an incredible speed in answering whatever business question you might have. And that's just looking at your actuals. If on top of that, then basically you can add an intelligent way of, let's say, simulating and going through all kinds of different scenarios very quickly. And it doesn't have to be on the lowest level of or highest level of detail, depending on how you look at it. It can be generic, but just, let's say, play around with different scenarios, compare different options in a very flexible, agile way, very, very far in making sure that as an organization, we make the right decisions.
Who wants to go next?
Oh, that's great. I'll add to that. Yeah, I mean, I think it is always a careful balance, particularly in accounting, right, where we have, reporting, whether it's IFRS or SEC filings or whatever the case may be, a careful balance between accuracy and precision and, speed and agility. And I think controls, which was mentioned in the question, detective in nature, right? A lot of companies have controls that are very reactive, and those processes are built to check and double check and triple check everything. And so I think one of the best ways to get at that is to look for ways to find more preventive controls, right? And so some of the low-hanging fruit, like I mentioned before, instead of saying, oh, let me double check and make sure that my trial balance, that all of my account reconciliations tie out to my trial balance, well, put a solution in place to address that for you. It seems so simple and it's low-hanging fruit, but some of those preventive controls can address a lot of the things that can cause downstream errors that then, bubble up as surprises. They result in rework. They change the forecast, and they're all the reasons people, get angry with accounting, right? So I think, addressing controls is really important. And then I think stop chasing pennies is another one, right? Accounting teams are notorious for that precision, which is so important to what we do. But I think it's really important for teams to have a perspective for what matters, where the risk is, and to find ways to focus their time on those highest risk areas and not to chase the pennies. And I think using automation, using solutions that can help identify unusual variances, auto certify, things that don't need the real-time attention. Those things are all enablers of repurposing your time and making that shift. So just a few thoughts. I too could go on for much longer on that topic.
Well, and I appreciate all the passion that you guys have for this topic. Clearly, you guys have been in this area for quite a while, and we appreciate you sharing all your insight with us. And with that, we want to wrap it up for today. And thank you very much for your time. And Padma, thank you for this great moderation. And everyone, we appreciate you participating today. We hope you got something out of this. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.